morning.
Hey, Shauna, how are you?
Hey, Priscilla, I'm good. How are you? And good
Good.
morning, everyone. I'm Shauna, and this is Priscilla. We are here this morning for Q4 Career Success Live. And the point of this series is to help job seekers end the year on a career high note. So I've been going live every week with industry experts and career coaches to help give job seekers that support that they need to feel really good about ending 2023 in a great way when it comes to their career. I'm joined this morning by Priscilla, who is a career pleasure coach. Thanks so much for being here this morning, Priscilla.
Thanks for having me, Shauna.
So I understand that you really help people focus on finding fulfillment in their career. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and your experience in this area?
Yeah, so I have my own experience finding my dream career. So my first career was actually as a school teacher. So I was a grade school teacher, and it was super clear to me very quickly that I was absolutely unhappy in that career. And I stayed in the career for about 3 years before I finally felt like, okay, something definitely has to change. And unfortunately for me, I started getting really ill, and the anxiety and the stress was just too much to handle. So I got to the point where I really told myself, so you have a choice. You can either stay in a career that leaves you feeling miserable and do this until retirement, which, I was in my late 20s at the time, so that would have been many years to go. Or you can face your fear and do what it is your heart truly desires. And at the time, it was continuing my studies in psychology. So I took a risk. I resigned from my position and I applied to the Master of Arts in Counselling Psychology at McGill. I got in. I never looked back. It was the best decision of my life. And when I was actually studying psychology, I realized career is a really big part of somebody's existence. Like, we spend so much time at work. And I knew that that's what I wanted. Like, that was the part of psychology I wanted to really dive into, was people's careers and their relationship to their career, which I feel is really how you show up in this world. And I had my own twists and turns. Like, I have a very non-traditional career path. I've already shared this with you. It's going to be actually 10 years ago in January that I quit my full-time job. I basically quit the status quo and I left society, and I went to live in a spiritual community, and I stayed there for a while, immersed myself in yoga, immersed myself in spirituality, got very, very clear about what I wanted to do, what my purpose was. And then came back to society and started my private practice. Yeah.
Well, that's quite the journey. Like, from elementary school teacher to career coach to yoga expert and all those things. It's quite the journey.
Yeah.
I relate to, like, when you. I'm curious what other folks are thinking as well. Can you relate to this, where you just feel kind of disconnected from what you're doing, right? You just, I was there as well in my career, and I find too, like, what happened with me was I was happy, and then I had like some life changes. Like, when I became a mom, like, my priorities completely changed and shifted, right? So things felt out of connection. Well, good for you it's a brave thing to do, I think, to leave society.
It was. Even when I look back, I'm like, wow, where did I find that courage?
Yes.
But I feel like we're always evolving. And now in my 10th mark, I feel like I need to create another big shift and another big change. And I feel like that's, we're going to talk about it, but I feel like that's really what gets people stuck, is that fear of removing themselves from the comfort zone. But when that can become a norm, then it becomes really easy to make changes in your career.
Yeah. And you touched on too, I think what so many of us become victim to in our careers, like, where we're taught that it's kind of like this linear, like, success, like this linear, like, go to school, Priscilla, get your degree, get good grades, then go get your professional designation, then climb the corporate ladder. But we at no point are taught, like, maybe you should stop for a second and, like, reflect and think about how you're feeling. Like, it's often not part of our journey.
100%. Yeah, for sure.
So you work with job seekers to help them find this sort of clarity in their careers and their path. And what sort of strategies do you recommend for job seekers? Like, how do they how do they start to stand out in their job search when it comes to making a pivot or things like that?
Sure. Yeah. I think, well, there are a couple of things that I feel are extremely important. And one of them, so one of the things that I've noticed that we can call it a mistake that job seekers make is diving into the job search without knowing what it is they actually desire. And so start looking for a job. So what this often looks like is sending a bunch of resumes, sending so many resumes out there to job opportunities that they find online, and then getting discouraged because it's like, well, I'm not getting any response. But it's like, yes, but is your resume speaking to that job? And is it a job you actually want? Because if it's not a job you want, then you're just it's just a lot of work for nothing, basically is the way I see it. Whereas if you're laser focused and you know exactly what it is you're looking for, then your resume is tailored for that. You're actually excited for that type of position. And it just makes the whole experience that much smoother and more fun and exciting for you. So that's definitely one of the things. And just, so for me, it's always about, okay, figure out first what it is you want to do before you even start to dive in. Yeah.
Can folks watching, can you relate to that? Have you done this? Like sent out the resume without really knowing if you even want the job? I see like, and I'm just like, I don't know, maybe there's a time and place for it, but I see this whole movement online, particularly like in the career coaching space, where you'll get coaches talking about like, oh, just get like an AI tool or whatever and get it to bulk send out like 200 resumes. And I don't know. Well, like, what's your take on, I react to it like for a bunch of different reasons, but do you think it's a numbers game or do we start with the strategy piece first?
Okay. It's a numbers game if you don't care what job you get.
Fair. Yeah.
Because I help people with the dream career and really finding a career they love, then I'm all about you as an individual. Like, who are you? What do you really desire? What are those talents that are unique to you? And what are those skills that you want to be using? And then what is that career you actually want, right? Because you can use AI can help you tweak, but I cringe at things like AI because regardless, it's always going to be generic. Like it's always going to give you something generic. That's not your voice. That's not tailored or unique, or really distinguishes you from others. Whereas if you can trust yourself enough to know that, hey, I really have something amazing to share with an employer, and I'm actually really excited about this position, and you get the support to prepare like a cover letter and a resume that speaks specifically to that. And obviously also there's a networking piece. I find that is going to make you stand out so much more than AI. Like, yeah, use AI if you just don't care is my opinion. And I know it's like blunt, but
I agree. I think there's a time and place for it, but I'm brought back to like this student that I had recently, and she was like, I'm going to make up the company, but she was like, I really, really want a job at Lululemon. Like, I really want to work there. It's my dream job. I know exactly what the dream job is. It's like a digital content creator with Lululemon, and I know I can be amazing at it. And it's like, how many people are applying for that job? Probably hundreds of people. But when I spoke with this student, she was in one of the classes I taught in the MBA program at the University of New Brunswick. When I spoke with this student, like she has like a deep, deep affinity and passion for this brand that's like really, really connected to like who she is.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm like, there's so much power and value in sharing that in a cover letter versus everyone getting like that 200 people going to AI and getting them to like generic, the same thing over and over again. Like it's the personal story that AI just can't, unfortunately, like it'd be nice that AI, maybe one day it will, but it can't help us. It can't help us write that, right? So
exactly. And you know, I'm part of a group, and we did that activity of taking a job description and putting it into AI and getting the cover letter. And yeah, AI writes a great cover letter, and it wouldn't be the technique I would use. It lacks like that. Like you can see, it's, I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it. It lacks something that I think only a human and a human who, like you said, that student who like genuinely is excited about Lululemon can bring to the cover letter.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
giving yourself permission to go there and to allow your voice and your excitement. Like, I think about a job that I really loved. That's how I approached it. I was like excited in the cover letter. I got the interview, excited during the interview. By the end of the interview, we were laughing and making jokes, right?
Yeah.
And people are so afraid of that. I'm like, don't be afraid of that, because the employer wants to hire you, not some pretend you because you want the job. Because then guess what? Whoever you were at the interview is going to be the person who shows up at work. So if you can't be yourself at work, I mean, like my values when it comes to work and your career is you want to be able to be yourself at work. If you can't, again, what's the point? That's your life. You spend so much time at work, like give yourself that space to be able to be yourself and show up in exactly like the person that you are, right?
I think we end up in that, like, it's like, you know, your job with being a teacher, like if we're forcing it, like we just feel terrible every day. Like same deal with like when I was thinking about my corporate career, just like not being aligned anymore. I'm just looking at the comments here. Even with, so this is a comment, even with AI, the odds of 2,000 applications versus 1 or 2 offers is a very bad metric.
Right.
And then remember, ATS records applications. So this is a good point too. It'll only be a matter of time before those ATSs can detect, I think, some similarities in terms of the applications and so on. I'm curious. So where is everyone today? I'm in St. John, New Brunswick. I'm going to type it in the comments here. I'm saying I'm in St. John, NB, and it's cold. Where are you? Where are you? And you're not home, Priscilla.
I'm not home.
I know that. Yeah.
I'm quite the nomadic soul. I'm always traveling. I'm always somewhere different. So I'm actually in New York City right now. I'm in New York City for a bit.
Okay. And I was like, I'm so jealous. It's like I've gone so many times with my mom to go see shows and things there. Anyway.
No, definitely a great city.
But you are typically based in
Canada.
Canada? Yeah. Typically based in Canada. Yeah. And whereabouts?
So, well, I'm moving. So in the last year, that's the thing, I'm always traveling. So last I was in Ottawa. But I will be moving soon. So that's where I was. So keep yourself posted for
all right. So who knows?
Exactly.
Someplace in Canada. Cool.
Exactly.
So I see Guelph, also another St. John NB. Thank you for being here this morning. Personal branding. You want to talk about personal brand for a second? I know it's something like we've talked about it over, like, because we've been connected for a while, back and forth on how to manage it. But when it comes to personal branding, like for job seekers, like what do you see the role of personal brand as being when it comes to job search and or career advancement?
It's really about knowing who you are. And what I mean by that is I always tell clients, what are your top 3 skills that no matter what, like no matter the job description, and here we're talking about just generally speaking, you would want an employer to know that you have. And usually like this is something that you are really, really good at. And I would say you want to just put those at the forefront. So it's like, what are your unique talents, but also what are those skills that you actually want to use? Because one of the things that I've noticed around, let's say, the career world discourse is that they'll be like, oh, these are the top skills you should have, or these are the skills that employers want to hire for. And I'm like, it's not really about what's going on out there. It's about who you are. So what are those skills that you want to use in the workplace, regardless of what, social media is saying that employers are looking to hire, because you're going to be looking for your unique employer that you really want to work with. So I would say really tailoring, laser focusing on what is it that I'm looking for, what are those skills that they're asking for, and what are those unique talents that I'm bringing to the forefront, to like the job search or the position. and to fully highlight those. And again, not to be afraid to allow your personality to shine. Like, it's just like, you know, it's really in to be vulnerable. And I think that there is a something good about that. And vulnerable doesn't have to be like opening up your heart and telling people everything, but it can just be actually allowing yourself to be yourself during your job search.
It's so true.
Yeah.
And even like to tell, I find it interesting when working with job seekers too. Like, even there's kind of like a fear sometimes to tell their story.
Yeah.
And like, to think that someone is going to have a completely linear career path, as an example, is just completely unrealistic, because humans change and evolve and grow and stuff happens and whatever, right? So, but yet we remain reluctant to, and we try to fit in like a perfect resume. And it's like, well, you know what? Something happened to provoke a change. So why not tell and share that?
Show who you are.
Story?
Exactly.
Yeah, to show
exactly.
yourself. Yeah, to show who you are.
Yeah.
And I think too, like, always remaining focused on like professionalism and knowing what your boundaries are around it and so on. But still, if there was something that happened in your career that really prompted you to rethink your values or rethink your path, and that's something you're comfortable sharing, why not include it like on your LinkedIn profile, right? Like, why not share that story? Anyways, you find too, like, sometimes job seekers will just be like timid. Like, is it against the rules? Or,
exactly.
you know?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I call them the career myths. And so there's definitely a lot of fears around, well, what if this, or what if that, or what happens here? And like, first of all, like you said, like, it's a reality. We're human, things happen. And I find sometimes it can actually bring a certain aliveness and uniqueness to your profile. And you have a story to tell. And I tell my clients, but wouldn't you want to be hired by someone who actually understands life happens?
Yeah.
Right? Do you really want to be hired by someone who's so like strict about how you should be showing up?
Yeah.
And that's questions to ask yourself too. Like, is this employer that I want to be hired? Is this place where I want to be hired, do they align with my values as an individual?
You know what? I think sometimes too, we do, like, I've seen job seekers do this as well, where it's like they're so like fixated and kind of in their mind, like they're married to this like particular employer. And then they start to go through the process, and maybe the process is like disconnected from what they thought that experience would be like, but they don't listen to themselves, right? Like, even though because it's like, well, I know it's going to be this great opportunity, but like, we should give ourselves permission to, like, okay, we went through a process. As a result of going through that process, we learned some things.
Yeah.
And maybe you have to take the job because that's the situation right now. And that's a reality too. But maybe it's something that you need to give yourself some additional consideration on too. Like, maybe it's not a fit. Maybe it's not what you thought.
Yes,
I don't know.
I agree. And I know you're touching on intuition here, and just like, oh, are you going to trust your gut on this? And again, it's really about trusting yourself in that job search. Because I have had so many clients, like, I think it's everyone I speak with, when I ask them, okay, well, how long have you been unhappy in your career? And they're basically going to be like, well, from week one, right? Nobody wants to admit to themselves that they've gone through that whole job search process, got hired, started the job, and then week one, they're like, oh, I think I made a mistake. And we fall into that guilt of feeling so bad, of resigning, or like you said, maybe sometimes that's all we have, so we have to stay for a bit. But I always tell them, okay, but when you look back, there was that moment in time in the hiring process where there was probably, your gut was like, not so sure about that. And yes, granted, you don't have any tangible proof that this isn't a good choice. But I'm telling you, the stories I've heard, my stories in my life, it's worth it to trust your gut, especially in those situations. Rather trust your gut and trust that next better position is going to happen. Because I also have clients that they say yes, even though they wanted to say no. And then they get that other phone call, or the next phone call, or the email the next day being like, hey, we'd like to hire you, or come in for an interview. But now they've committed to another employer, right?
I feel like too, like along my years of my career journey, I did always feel like I owed them or something. Like, you know, if you like
Mm,
invested all this time and effort into an interview,
exactly.
but then as like we had more experience, like working in HR in my career, I thought the company doesn't have that same relationship or loyalty to you. So I feel like if you
Yeah.
took the job this week and you get your dream job offer next week, like peace out to these guys. You know what I mean? Like read that
Yeah,
contract, see
totally.
you later. Anyway, like if I could go back and give like my younger self more advice, like
Mm.
I would tell
Oh
that
yeah,
to any job
totally.
seeker. You don't know owe
Yeah.
them anything. It sounds horrible because there are some great employers out there, but at
Of
the end of the
course, of
day,
course.
if
Yeah.
there's cutbacks and layoffs, nobody's saying like, "Oh, but remember that time
Oh
when
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Priscilla came and like." No, nobody cares.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're
It's
gonna
a
fire you.
transaction. Yeah.
I always
Yep.
say they're like an employer will not, if they need to fire you, they will fire you. They're not gonna
Yep.
worry about, oh, is my employee gonna have money to pay rent? They don't care. And so, granted, you want to show up as a great employee, you do your work, etc. But even as you're saying that, I'm like, when I knew from the get-go I didn't want to be a teacher.
Yep.
This is no lie. I knew from the minute I was doing my Bachelor of Education and I was doing my internships, I knew this is not my career. This is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. And we justify. So I'm like, well, I guess I'll do it for like maybe 5 years. I lasted 3.
Mhm,
You know,
mhm,
I
mhm.
still remember so we were a group of new teachers, and I worked for the Peel District School Board at the time. And I remember a bunch of us from Queens were sitting together, and it was like this big meeting for the new teachers. My anxiety was
Mhm,
like out of this world.
mhm.
And yeah, I had all the signs that were telling me like, this is a no. Stop the train. This is a no. And I just kept going and going and going. And yeah,
Mhm.
I needed to get sick in order to stop, right? Which is really
Isn't
unfortunate.
it's so sad, but and I even like intuition. I,
Mhm.
I hindsight and intuition is like, oh, you always knew. Like, and
Yeah,
you can
yeah,
apply that to personal life too. It's like,
yeah,
oh, I know
totally.
that was a terrible life. I knew it, but you like go through the motions. And I was like, I don't know. I was thinking about this in my career, and even in some decisions that I've made like this year in my business,
Mhm.
I was like, I like as I was signing the contract, I was like,
Yeah,
I probably shouldn't.
yeah.
But so I feel like this is just a skill that's really, really
Mhm.
hard for some of us to master.
A hundred
I put
percent.
myself in that crowd. I'm just like, it's right there telling
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
don't do it. Okay, it's fine.
Mhm. And
Oh,
I think it's yeah, giving yourself grace because we all do it. We all override our intuition, override our gut for different reasons. And I always look at it as like, okay, so that happened, and what lesson did I learn? Like, what is I talk a
mm,
lot about the universe. What is the universe trying to tell me here? Because I also believe that everything's happening perfectly. So I probably wasn't supposed to trust my gut in that moment because there was a lesson I needed to learn that would pave the path for what's going to happen next or how I'm going to approach life next. So now I'm at a point where if I have a job that doesn't feel right, I mean, I still sometimes don't listen to myself, I'll be honest,
mm,
but I'm a
mhm.
lot quicker to say no or to resign, right?
Yeah.
Like a couple of summers ago, I took a contract. Actually, I don't think it was a contract. I think it was like a job, but it was part-time. And within the first week, I was like, I can't do this. And it was embarrassing to have to tell them, okay, I'm actually not going to stay. But what a relief. And people, you'd be surprised at how employers are so understanding. And they're like, good for you for listening to yourself. Because they don't
Mhm.
want someone who doesn't want to be there either.
Yeah, it's so true. I even like even I don't know. There's something really brave too about like not toughing it out or grin and
Yeah,
bear it for a while or whatever, or just making the
totally.
choice when you know it's wrong. It's wrong.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
again, it's like if we're in a situation where we can get ourselves out of that situation, by all means, let's do it. And then
Mhm.
fully acknowledging there are moments in our lives where we have to eat and pay a bill, and
For
and
sure.
that adds
For
like a
sure.
whole other set of like decision criteria that have to come into the equation.
Mhm.
When it comes to career transition, what do you
Mhm.
suggest? Like, do you have any tactics that people can use to more effectively navigate those types of changes?
Mhm. Definitely don't wait till it's I want to call it the ride or die, like the do or die
Oh,
situation,
yeah.
right? Because you will need the clarity to do this successfully. Like you really need to figure out what it is you want to do to have that foundational piece to be successful. But again, sometimes what I'll see is people are just so like, but I hate my job. I just want to quit now,
Mm,
which you can do that too. I think it goes both ways. You can either stay in your position and say, all right, give yourself a timeline. By when are you quitting this job? Give
mhm,
yourself a timeline. If it's by January 1st, no matter what, you're quitting, then stick to that and be like, okay, by January 1st, this is what I want to have in place so I can quit. Or maybe you're going to say, I'm giving myself 1 year to get things moving. But again, make that goal, give yourself a timeline, identify, well, what are the things I'm going to do, and get the support. Like nobody ever was super successful at something without some kind of support on the side.
mhm.
And I think like a lot of the things we talked about today, there are ways to approach it. There are ways to navigate the job search or even like the dream career search in a way where you can be successful. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to crash and burn 10 times and
Mm,
figure it out over like years. This can actually happen a lot faster than you believe. Like I've had clients in 3 sessions, they have their clarity. Like I've had
mm.
clients in a year, they had their clarity, right? It really depends on, well, your readiness, how willing you are to dive in and do something new and really different. Because there's going to be some new behaviors that you're going to have to bring into your day-to-day or your routine in order to experience something different for sure. Yeah.
I no, I'm so with you. And I like when I reflect on like my own personal, like very personal experience with like when it feels like your world is like falling apart. And I still
Mhm.
remember like the moment I knew I had to do something was so my son had turned 1, and I remember I was I loved being home with him. Anyway, so I would drop him off at daycare. I would
Mhm.
cry from daycare to like the parking lot at my office. Okay. I'd park my car, and then I had to like walk downhill. It was like a block away. And I'd be like, okay, like you got to get yourself together to go to work, to a
Mhm.
job that you hate, to a boss that was
Yeah.
difficult, to like so I would like tough it out. I would walk out the doors, get halfway up the hill, cry, and then get myself together to go get him at daycare. And it was like ride or die at that point. Like I just remember, like, luckily I have a partner who was just like, this is
Yeah, yeah.
this
Stop,
is
right?
like
Yeah.
no. So we made a decision like pretty quickly that it was like, nope,
Mhm.
transition is happening now. And we were able to do that
Yeah.
for a bunch of different reasons. But what I really appreciate about what you said, for me, I was like, clarity was like, it was like in a moment, it was like right there. But what I appreciate is that for someone else, it is maybe like a year from now. And it drives
Mhm.
me absolutely crazy when I see coaches being like, if you follow my 5-step framework, you're going to have like this perfect
Mhm.
outcome,
Mhm.
when you don't know like what people need to unpack. Like,
Exactly. I think that's a big piece because let's say you are that person that needs a year. If you don't start now, then when are you
yeah,
starting in 10 years when you'll need that year? Whereas if you start now, like you hate your job, just start now.
yeah,
Nothing says you have to quit today. Just start, like I'm like, just start now. Like
yeah, yeah.
just decide I'm going to quit my job. Because the thing is, the minute you decide I'm quitting my job, things unravel in a way where you might decide in a year, like that's what happened to me for one of my jobs. I needed a change. And I was like, okay, in a year. And I was told, yeah, it won't be a year. And I think within 3 months, I was out.
Mm,
But it's like getting grounded, making that decision and trusting. I always tell people your education, like everything you've accumulated, your education, your experience, everything you've accumulated until now, no one can take that away from you. So that
mhm.
doesn't just disappear because you quit a job,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it is so true. I have on my YouTube channel, I have a video and it's called, I might get the title wrong, but it's like, if you hate your job and you can't quit.
Right.
And it's like, okay, and full disclosure, it's my most cringy video. Like it was like very early, do you know, like, you know, and that was the other thing that's so uncomfortable about change, especially like going into a career path like this and content creation and so on. Like
Right.
I'm putting myself out there before like I'm ever comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
But anyways, this video is my most watched video. It has like 15,000 views on it. I'm just like,
Wow.
part of me like is like, okay,
Good for
that's
you.
so cool. But it
Yeah.
also, I'm like, it's so, anyway, I'll link it here if people want to watch it.
Yeah.
But I find it so interesting seeing the comments because the whole theme of the video is just what you're describing, is just like, if you hate your job and you can't quit, like, let's start asking ourselves what we can do today to make tomorrow and next week and so on better. And there's like two type of comments that I will get. And one is like, I'm never going to be able to quit my job. And like some of the comments I have to like actually delete because they're like troubling for like a bunch of different reasons.
Yeah.
But there's that one type of person who's like, I absolutely can't quit my job. There's nothing I can do. I have bills to pay. And it's like, I get you. I'm not saying you got to quit today, just like you're saying, but you can start the process right now. And then the second type of person is the person who's just like, yeah, I'm so pumped to start looking. My job's like, there's no in between.
Right,
like,
right,
on these
yes.
So crazy.
And there is beautiful, because there is that gray zone of it. There's not a specific way it should be. And for me, it's like, decide, start now. I say make a plan, but things never really go as planned. And then have a timeline and decide, okay, by this date, this is what's happening, and be willing to do something different.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, as long as we have a plan, like, and yes, we definitely have to stay like flexible with that. But at least if we're working from something, we know what, like, there are obvious things that we'll have to do, like personal brand, resume, networking, like all the other obvious things. So if we have some sort of plan and we know that we have to adjust it, I think we're just in a much better situation to make that change today, tomorrow, a year from now, whatever the timing is.
Sure.
And then there are realities too that go along with, some jobs are harder to get and to transition to and from than others, right? So
yeah, I mean, granted, I'm always going to play devil's advocate. So I'm always going to be like, really, is that true? Like, I think that I genuinely believe anything is possible. And part of that belief also comes from my doing things I thought were going to be impossible and actually succeeding. And then seeing my clients do things they thought would be impossible and succeeding. So I always say, like, you actually never know. Like, what is your desire, and go for it. You want to quit your job, quit your job. And the first time I quit, not when I was a teacher, because when I was a teacher, I knew I was going back to school, but there were many times I quit jobs. But one of them, like, I only had $3,000 in my bank account. And I just quit. And I was just like, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Granted, I felt I had a support network to be able to do that. But you don't know what doors open. Like, the way I see it is that if, let's say, your anxiety is kicking in and it's telling you don't do this, and I feel like there's a difference between clear anxiety, do not do this, and the anxiety, I'm just afraid to do this, then don't do it. But if you're just afraid, like if it's just fear that's being like, but what if this happened, and what if that happens, and like you've created this whole scenario, I say go for it. Because you know what, I remember somebody had told me, if you leap, the net appears. And I remember at the time when that person told me that, I was like, you have got to be kidding me that I'm going to leap and trust that some net's going to appear. I was like, yeah, right. I'm not doing that. I have a plan B, and my plan B is going to be there. But along my journey, I realized that she was right. When you jump, when your gut is telling you to jump and you jump, the net appears. And the net can be money you weren't expecting. The net can be new people you meet, opportunities that show up. Like, the net is something is going to support you if you trust yourself to do what it is you really want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. Like
Yeah.
it is so true, but also equally scary,
Scary.
right? Because it does
Yeah.
require like a certain amount of like faith and belief
Yeah.
that things are just going to work out, which can be one of the
Yeah.
scariest things. Like when it comes to your job and your primary source of
Totally.
income
Totally.
is trusting it.
Yeah. But then that's another piece also that I find gets in people's ways, like their mindset. Like, what is it that
Yeah.
you believe is possible for you? And I mean, I have clients and I tell them, if you don't believe that's an option for you, why are we even doing this?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
like, if you don't believe that it's possible for you to find a career you love, I'm not actually clear why we're working
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's honest, because you have to have at least, even if it's just the tiny little bit of belief of like, me, like, I trust that maybe it's possible to find something I love, or there has to be something I love. How can there not be something I love? That's still something we can start with and work with.
Yeah.
But if you're like, whatever, Priscilla, this is a load of bleep, like, it doesn't exist, people hate their job, whatever, I'm like, okay, but that's what you believe, and that is what you're going to create and
Yeah.
find are careers you hate,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
Well, how could people watching, if they wanted to work
Yeah.
with you or keep in touch with you, how would they go about that?
For sure. So they can definitely send me an email on LinkedIn. And I always say, actually tell me where you know me from and why you're connecting. There's a higher chance that I'm going to respond. And also be on the lookout. In January, I'm going to be opening up a job search clinic. So just be on the lookout for that. So yeah, following on my LinkedIn
Awesome. Awesome.
and just
Okay.
connecting with me there.
I'll put your link in the comments. So if you want to
Perfect.
connect with Priscilla, make sure you click the link. I am excited to hear more about this job search
Yes.
clinic. That
Yes.
sounds exciting.
Coming in
I,
2024.
Awesome. I know I'm like, is anyone else planning for 2024? Just type in 2024 in the chat if you are, because I'm like
Mhm.
deep into planning mode for 2024. And it's like,
Totally.
what will the future bring? 20,
Mhm.
I'm typing 2024 in the comments before we peace out for today. 2024. Yeah,
Definitely.
we're definitely planning. So,
Yeah.
well, Priscilla, thank you so much for chatting chatting with
Mhm.
us today. I
Thank
think
you,
there's
Shauna.
so much value in like the pieces of advice that you give, particularly around like like trusting ourselves and our
Mhm.
intuition and working
Yeah.
from a place of intention. I think it's so important for job seekers, and I think that this is something that often becomes overlooked or pushed to the back burner for for a variety of different reasons. So thank you for sharing your
Definitely.
perspective on that. Again, I'll pop the link to Priscilla's LinkedIn in the comments. Make sure to connect with her, and we'll be watching for your job search clinic in
Yes.
2024. This was Q4 Career Success Live. This is a series that's running every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Atlantic. And we want to help job seekers end 2023 on a career high note. So I will be back here next week with another career coach to chat about all things job search and career. Thanks so much to
Thank you.
everyone for watching today, and look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Shauna. Bye.
Bye.